Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no copay. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, it's March. We're going to have March Madness, St. Patrick's Day, all kinds of crazy stuff happening this month. So it's time to get healthy. You know, we had to recover in January and February. And then by March, a lot of us start letting down a little bit and forget about our New Year's resolution. So Simply Snacking is here to help you. They're sponsoring the podcast. They're bringing all this great content to you. So please enjoy Simply Snacking. If you haven't tried it yet, go try it. You won't be disappointed. They have great chicken and beef flavors, and there's lower carb options, a little bit higher carb options, but I would highly recommend them. It's a great emergency go-to, and they're good people. So give them your business. They're a nice company. They're doing good things. They're raising the animals responsibly and treating them nicely. So enjoy some chicken and beef and enjoy Simply Snacking. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us. Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. This is one that I'm really excited about. This is kind of spur of the moment too. Bitten Jonsson, an addiction specialist, food addiction in particular. She's really revolutionized the way we look at food. And I can tell you, being a doc, practicing a lot of years, we talked about addiction in the low carb context that people were saying, oh, once I went low carb, my alcohol addiction got better or my smoking got better. I don't desire pornography like he did. That's exactly what we were talking about. We were trying to figure this out because we were seeing it, but we didn't know how to explain it. And I got mercilessly attacked on social media by doctors saying there's no such thing as food addiction. Anyone who says anything about addiction that, and so I had a retort back to this doctor who happened to be a pediatrician. And I said, you never hear about parents complaining that the kids go and see grandma and they give them cookies and ice cream and soda all day and then they're a disaster to deal with the next day. You've never been sleep deprived. You've never heard anyone say, I had a stressful day, I need a drink, or I'm exhausted, I need a cup of coffee. All these things, and we don't realize the addictive properties and how food affects us. And I think as time has come along, there's a lot more I've learned in recent months and recent years. So Bitten, welcome. It's so awesome to have you and tell people your background story and what you do.
Oh, it's awesome being with you. I really look forward to that. Well, I used to sneak sugar when I was sugar cubes or sugar lumps, in the coffee. That, I'm born 52, so we didn't have a lot of candy. We didn't have soda and candy. I lived in the country and we ate just normal, real food. So whenever I got a hold of sugar, I absolutely loved it. So I was already then hiding, lying, and sneaking. And, anything you do that with could be an addiction, right? And then when I grew up, I loved chocolate and ice cream, and more than food, I wanted to eat chocolate and ice cream. So that's what I ate most of it. And then I started to eat more and more, the same amount wasn't enough anymore. So anyway, I came to nursing school. And then, of course, a lot of women talked about diet, body weight, diet, weight, diet. So somebody said, why don't you start smoking? Because when we smoke, then we lose appetite. So I did. And, I loved smoking from the first cigarette. So I was a smoker right away. And now I'm smoking. And then, maybe a year later, still in nursing school, we were going out dancing. So we said, why don't we have some wine? And I was 19 when I was drinking the first time. And the first time I drank, I'll never forget that evening. I loved it. And I thought, how stupid have I been not doing that before? So I loved alcohol and I loved being high from alcohol the first time. So anyway, to make a long story short, when I'm 33, married in US, my ex-husband now, he forced me into treatment for alcoholism. And that's the best thing that ever happened. Although I wanted almost to kill him at that time because I was so ashamed. I thought that was the lowest of low. And I thought I can never, work anymore as a nurse. I can never be with friends. I can never have fun. I can never do anything. I'm an alcoholic. So it was really a low point in my life. But, that treatment center, they had doctors and nurses and psychologists and the PTs and God knows what, chefs and everything. So they introduced me to a totally new lifestyle, but mostly what they did, they sent me to University of Irvine to sit and listen in lectures of researchers that were doing research on reward center and dopamine, the dopamine system. And I learned about endorphins and serotonin and, you know, adrenaline and noradrenaline. And as a nurse, I absolutely drooled over that. So they convinced me that it was an illness, that my brain, my reward center developed an addiction. And from that day, I have not had any shame telling I'm an alcoholic and a sugar addict and nicotine addict, because I have the knowledge. I know what it's all about. I know it's not because I have a flawed moral or, there was something happened to me. A trauma didn't cause it. It was the biochemistry in my brain. And so I decided to set out, helping people understand that, because it takes away the shame, takes away the stigma. But I'll tell you what, I don't know if I put a dent in something, but maybe I put a dent somewhere. But it is very hard to convince people about these things, and I don't really understand why. So, but I followed ASAM, American Society of Addiction Medicine, which is clinical and research, follow them all the years. And from the first beginning, they said alcoholism was a disease in 1954, a progressive, chronic, irreversible disease, until now, when we have the concept of addiction interaction disorder, one illness, many outlets. And, that it is a physical brain illness with physical, psychological, social, and spiritual consequences. So one of my aims is to help people put the horse in front of the wagon and not the other way around. Because people think that let's go to food. And by the way, I prefer the word sugar addiction, because I used to say that seared cod with butter has never hit my reward center. but I know what does. Processed food, sugar, sweeteners, flour, all that kind of thing. So that's what is the psychoactive substance, anything that becomes sugar in your body. So, the important thing for me is to help people understand this. And people think that I eat because I'm sad. And I said, no, you're sad because you eat. Because, sugar, all these foods that I said, or if we should call them food, destroys your gut, your microbiome. And you get toxins up to your brain, and you get a very destroyed microflora. And you know what I said? There's more bacteria in your gut than there is cells in your body or stars in the universe. So
yeah, and that sounds like, like Star Wars or crazy talk. And I'm telling you, as a practicing doc for all these years, when people talk about microbiome, I'll go, yeah, okay, whatever. Microbiome, leaky gut, all this stuff. And then I start research. I'm like, oh my goodness, how can there be so much evidence and so much research and no one talks about it? And to your point, early childhood stress, eating a lot of bad food affects the microbiome. And then the microbiome sends signals to your brain to make you eat more of that food. So then you get into this addiction spiral, right? You can't get out of it, because when you stop eating the bad food, you don't get the signals to your brain, you feel terrible, right? When you're, especially this, we touched briefly when we were talking about lipopolysaccharides and how that affects anxiety, depression, reward centers, everything.
Yeah, I know. And I was so fortunate meeting this naturopathic doctor, Peter Wilhelmsson, many years ago. And he, thought that he could cure sugar addiction with herbs. And I started laughing because he didn't know about the brain, but he knew about the microbiome. So we said, okay, let's merge. So I started to study a lot of functional medicine, orthomolecular medicine. I read about Abraham Hoffer, the first orthomolecular doctor. You should look him up. And, the interesting thing, he was treating Bill W., the founder of AA, for depression with B3 niacin. And B3 niacin is a very potent vitamin, So I started to look into this, but there is a lot of resistance, especially from the pill industry, of course, but I love the definition of orthomolecular medicine. It says that first, start out to heal the body with the most normal, smallest molecule, like food, you know, instead of going for, you know, the heavy axe. So I love that definition, that you start out changing somebody's lifestyle, teach them to sleep better, teach them to breathe. I love teaching people nose breathing and taping their mouth at night and using the relaxator. It is such a tiny little tool. You teach them in 10 minutes. It has such a powerful thing. And you know, have you thought about that? The first thing you do when you're born, you start breathing. But how come doctors never talk breathing with their clients? Why don't you check if your client is over breathing, mouth breathing, stress breathing? How come we don't check that? You know, it's crazy.
And how all these things
snore?
Contribute. Yeah. And all these things and how they contribute. It's like, look, if you're not sleeping at night, as a matter of fact, it's funny because when I was in residency, I remember I told my wife, this is the craziest thing, but I guarantee you 100% that being stressed and sleep deprived does something to the hunger centers, because the next day I would be ravenous all the time. I'd always want to eat. I was always hungry, way more than I normally would be. But being sleep deprived, being stressed, right?
Yes.
And now we're finding sleep deprivation messes up the gut microbiome. Stress really screws up the gut microbiome. And what I've noticed, Bitten, and dealing with patients is I can now, doing this for a little while, say, hey, if you're a stressed out middle-aged real estate agent, housewife with 3 kids that are having trouble, it's going to be a struggle, especially when you're too busy to talk. When I'm trying to have a conversation, like, hold on, let me send this email. Oh, I'll be right with you, doctor. It's like, this is your appointment time and you're wasting it on making phone calls and emailing while I'm sitting here. Tells you your life is totally, because it's not just this half hour, it's your life. So stop and take a breath. So if you could do a sauna, if you could just sit, if you could just meditate, if you could pray, find something where you get your peace and people do better. I've seen people lose weight just from starting to do puzzles at night or start doing watercolor painting. So that is a huge, huge factor.
Yes, I know exactly. You know, all these things go together. So, you know, and if you get introduced to junk food when you're a baby, a toddler, you're going to screw up the homeostasis, the natural body function. So if something happens to you, a stressor, a trauma, it's going to affect you 10 times more. It's going to get potentiated. You see what I mean? So then you think the trauma is the cause of you eating, but you know, the problem was that I used to talk about a psychological, a physiological, and a spiritual, psychological immune system. We have several immune systems, you know. So if you break that down by something, you know, anything that comes your way going to shut you down. So it's going to lower your defenses. You don't have, you know, your capacity. And I think another thing that is so interesting is if you look at the prefrontal cortex and the functions in there, you know, they are very important to develop slowly, start developing by the age of 5, and it should be matured. What I learned when I went through my medical training was that it should be done around the age of 20. Some years later, they said that it probably doesn't mature until you're 25. 2 years ago, I read about a study at Oxford. Researchers saying that it doesn't mature until we're 30. Okay, now I'm starting to think, why does it mature slower nowadays? Could there be something that comes inside of us that hampers it? Because if you look at how processed food, sugar and flour affect the brain, you're going to see that it hampers the rewiring, it hampers the plasticity in the brain, it causes damage on the neurons. So wait a minute, what is liksom, you know, cause and effect? It's almost impossible to say. You know, one thing gives another, gives a third, gives, I mean, it's just a crazy vicious circle.
Yeah, and that's what I've noticed looking at this, because, you know, me looking at, you know, there's certain people say, you got to get your mitochondria healthy. You got to get your gut lining healthy. And you say, well, which one is it? Then you look and it's like, well, it's the same thing. They all talk about if you're not sleeping, it messes up the mitochondria, it messes up the gut. If you're stressed out all the time, if you're drinking too much, if you're smoking, it messes up all these things. So the approach that whatever we're getting at, it's the same approach that we have to fix life.
Yeah, if you're a worryholic, you know, you need to learn to deal with that. If you have automatic negative thoughts, you need to deal with that. But, you know, how would you, if you go to therapy and start working on those feelings and you eat junk food, which is going to cause negative feelings, it's not going to work. So, you know, I'm thinking about all this talk about we need more research, we need more research, more research. Okay, let me ask you, how many more studies do we need that eating proper food is good for the human body? How many more studies do we need that proper sleep is good for the body, physical activity? You know,
Relaxing a little bit, having fun, laughing, you know, all these things, doing positive things, not focusing on the negative, all these things, you know, really plays a big role. And that's why I'm so excited about this podcast and having you on, because these are things I've been seeing and saying, okay, how come no one's talking about this? You know, it's not just, I mean, I've seen people do a perfect ketogenic diet. I'm looking at their sugars. I know they're good and everything looks okay and they're not getting results, but they're weighing themselves 6 times a day. They're stressed out. They're, you know, in fights with their spouse all the time. They're not sleeping well. It's like, we got to fix these other problems. Fixing one of the wheels isn't going to make your car go. You got to fix all the wheels.
But, you know, one of the problems we have in today's world, too, is that when we treat addiction, we treat alcoholism over here in this center. We treat sugar addiction over here. We treat exercise addiction here. We treat, see, that's what I left many years ago when I understood functional medicine, is that I treat the brain. I treat addiction, you know, because it is, if you develop one addiction, I tell you, you have several. There is nobody that have one addiction today, because the addictive nature, once, if you understand how the reward center gets rewired, you know, you're going to understand that anything that moves it, you will become addicted to. So if you weigh yourself 6 times a day, you're addicted to the scale. If you love stress, like the real estate woman you talked about, she could be an adrenaline junkie, adrenaline addict. So when she tries to come down and relax from adrenaline, she gets withdrawal symptoms. So of course she got to boost it up again, you know. So you have to help people to detox from all their crazy behaviors.
And then we're withdrawing from caffeine, we're withdrawing from alcohol, we're withdrawing from all these things, right?
Yeah, you have to take away, you have to look at 2 things.
How about this?
Intake addiction. Yeah.
The cell phone, right? The cell phone. I mean, I'm stunned. As a matter of fact, you know, just knowing how I grew up, you know, MTV came out, then all of a sudden no one has an attention span anymore. Now it's like you need this fast pace, and that people just can't sit and talk because they're distracted by the ones. I miss out something that's happening out in Twitter land or somewhere else. And so I've seen it. As a matter of fact, one of my neighbors, she's like, when we go to dinner, she said, no one takes their cell phone out. We're together right now. And really it's a sign of disrespect, I think, when you're sitting with someone looking at your phone while they're telling you their life story.
It's horrible.
You know?
It's horrible.
But that addiction of hearing that ding or whatever, you know, how much of an addiction social media has become, and we don't realize it. We just don't shut down.
It was a study coming out here in Sweden now at Karolinska Institute showing that screens hamper your brain. It affects your brain plasticity in the same way addiction does. So that's what I mean. We have to look at the client. What kind of intake addictions do you have? Stuff you put in yourself. What kind of process addiction do you have? Behavior addictions. Because it is often sugar that creates all other addictions, because that's a gateway drug. So the sugar that we get as children, small, that's the first psychoactive stuff that we get in our body, will start.
And it's socially acceptable, right? No one questions you if you're drinking a Coke.
Yeah. So right? It's going to start preparing the brain for all this, and it changes microflora. And thinking about, I don't know about you, but most people I know have a hyperthyroid diagnosis, right? Isn't that very common with your
hypothyroid?
Hypo, yeah.
Yeah, low thyroid, yeah.
Yeah, low, yeah. And you know that grain is very because it destroys the villi. You know, it's very tough on your intestine. So it is.
And then it affects the opiate receptors in the brain too. And so there's some form of addiction from the grain itself.
Oh, grain is very, and it's sugar, as David Unwin said, sugar molecules holding hands. That's what grain is.
Yeah, and then you break it down into sugar. It does. Your body doesn't care where it came from, whether it was whole wheat or whether it came from
as
rice
long as
or
it's
whatever.
Sugar up in your brain. Yeah, I used to say that the brain is colorblind. So if it's honey and white powder sugar, it's the same.
Well, and also the power of the brain with, you know, quitting smoking. And then you say, oh gosh, every time I had a glass of wine or I had a cup of coffee, I would smoke my cigarette. Then you make that association. So when you have the coffee, you want that cigarette again.
Of course.
And then the other thing is whenever people quit smoking, they gain 15 or 20 pounds because now they have to have something else to get that dopamine rush, which is usually suckers or candy, you know,
And that leads, that leads me back to thinking, you know, what we need to do is to heal the brain and the body at the same time. We need to work with a very multifactorial approach. You need to start healing the microbiome. You need to start healing the inflammation factors. You need to start looking at nutritional deficiencies. You need to start healing the brain, the fatty acid profile. If you start, I mean, you have to look at the whole human and start healing everywhere. You can't take, you know, one little piece at a time, because it's going to be like you describe it now. They fall and they fall again and again. So they never really get up on the wagon to feel really good. So we have to treat the whole human being. And that's why we have to connect the dots between all our fields.
Yeah, and that's why it's so fascinating. When you and I were talking, because we both gave talks at the Nutrition Network Summit, and it was great because I'm looking at yours, and we say, wow, we're kind of looking at the same problems and from a little different perspective, maybe. And I think that's what happens in the nutrition world is people say it's calories in, calories out, exercise more, you're lazy, you gotta get up and move and you'll lose weight. And then the other group is saying it's all about hormones and insulin and all that. And you know, and you look at it and go, okay, look, is 500 calories of salmon going to treat your body and your physiology and your brain and your heart the same as salmon or gummy bears? You know, you look and you say, well, it does make a difference what you're eating. And the caloric input does make a difference at some point. But you look at the gut microbiome and the power. And one thing that you had raised when we were talking was Candida. Tell us a little bit about Candida and addiction and how that affects the brain.
Well, you know, Candida is a group of fungus that is living in a normal flora. I have to say that. So people think I got to kill my Candida. No, you can't kill it. It has to be part of your normal flora. It's on your skin. It's in your body. But, you know, it's like most people notice this when they take a lot of antibiotics. You know, they get thrush or thrush in their mouth, or women get, you know, what do you call it?
Yeast infections, vaginal yeast infections.
Yeah. You know, we want to sit on the big brush because it itches like crazy and we go nuts. Yeah. It's horrible. But anyway, so people know it's not dangerous, but it's very unpleasant. But what it is all about is that the nice bacteria, some of the nice bacteria that keeps the Candida in check, you know, say, okay, you can't grow bigger than this, stay here. If they die off, you know, this bugger's going to start growing like crazy and clog up your villi in your stomach, and you get nutritional deficiencies. And you can have several stages of that. So what I see in my clients, I always test them for it when I work with clients. I see that, you know, they have stage 2 or 3. Some have stage 4, the leaking gut, and they are incredible, dangerously sick. They have autoimmune illnesses. Fibromyalgia is very common that they have because they have high inflammatory factors in their body, and their stomach doesn't work at all. And another thing, so anyway, most of the cases I treat with, you know, putting them on keto food. We take away all the carbs that can feed the Candida. And then, you know, we give them prebiotics or probiotics, you know, in small amounts. But you have to remember too that giving probiotics, it's going to help your stomach when it goes through your stomach. It doesn't engraft. Those bacteria doesn't engraft. So you have to heal it with food in the natural way. So the good bacteria can start feeding and growing and get back to normal. So that's
and then improving the gut. You mentioned leaky gut. For people who don't know, it's basically the cells all kind of stick together at a basement membrane.
The villi is dead. You know, I used to say that the villi is, you know, the fuss on the inside of your intestines. And that is extremely important because that go whooshy whooshy all the time to drag the nutrients down to the, you know, blood, very blood rich environment. So it can take care of the proteins and the vitamins and all the nutrients and take them out to your body to send them to the brain and toes and nails and everywhere. So if it's
and you want to keep the bad
slippery
stuff inside that tunnel. You want to keep it in there, the bad stuff, because the problem is when you get leaky gut, when you have little gaps in there, you can leak this in. There's something called lipopolysaccharides, which are the breakdown products of these bacteria.
Toxins. You get toxins and
depression, anxiety, inflammation.
Yeah, and not only that, half melted proteins or nutrients will go out, and the immune system is going to think it is an intruder, so it's going to blast on, and you get immunity, autoimmune illness. That's how autoimmune illnesses come about, you know.
Like ulcerative colitis, and that's why I was really interesting.
And, yeah, multiple sclerosis. There are many, many we could go into here that this happens. And then another thing, it's not that, you know, only bad stuff will leak out. The thing is too, that when your intestine, the inside of your intestine doesn't have that fuzzy villi, you know, all the good nutrients, you're going to poop them out. They're going to go straight through. They don't stick and get out in your body. So you get malnutrients.
Malabsorption, yeah, and you just can't get, you have B12 deficiency and niacin deficiency, all these kind of things, vitamin D deficiency, which is a huge problem for a lot of people.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's important to realize, but I think part of it's saying, okay, you can't just take probiotics and then be stressed out and hate the world too. It's like smoking and running every day. It's not going to help your lungs. You got to figure out, and get the whole lifestyle right. And then sleep deprivation.
Sleep is very important, and breathing. I want to tell about breathing because, you know, your body has a natural detox capacity of the waste products, because every one of your cells is like a factory. So there's waste products all the time, natural, okay? But the body has to get rid of it. And, you know, you pee out some, you poop out some, but the biggest detox is your breathing. So if you don't breathe properly, breathing is 60%. Going to the bathroom, number 2, is 10%. Sweating is 30%. So 60% is that you do breathe properly. Most people have, you know, over breathing. They overstress, overeat, overbreathe, overspend, over. And then they crash for a while, and then they go over again, you know. So the thing is that you have to slow it down. And so many people, breathe up here. And another thing, they have stress apnea. I can see that if I'm short of time and I think, oh, I'm just going to peek at my mail, and I open my computer and 30 mails go wham in, you know what I do? I hold my breath. I go,
yeah.
I have stress apnea or computer apnea, or call it what you want. And I go, oh, wait a minute, I got to breathe. Luckily, I have this little toy on my desk all the time. So I have to breathe. So this is a small toy. It was a Russian doctor called Bitten Jonsson that came up with this. So it's a breathing resistance. So when I watch TV, when I go out walking, I don't care what people think. I have this in my mouth. Maybe they think it's a pacifier. I don't care. But I have it when I drive my car. But it calms me down tremendously. It just because I practice.
It's kind of like when people breathe into a bag, you know, they're, you know, when they're hyperventilating and panicking.
You breathe in through your nose and you blow out, and
that helps open your small airways.
Yes, it does. It's a breathing resistance. And every night I tape my mouth, and you know I love that, and I have much more energy.
I'm laughing because my wife just recommended I tape my mouth. We were talking to someone yesterday. He goes, "Yeah, I tape my mouth at night." My wife looks at me and said, "That's probably a good idea, honey." And I was like, "Oh, geez. All right, I'll try."
Are you snoring?
Every now and again, if I sleep on my back.
Yeah, well, try taping. It's hard when you have a beard, but if you take enough long tape, you know, you could tape, so it's better anyway.
People have told me I should have it on all day. Is that a good idea?
Right. No, you shouldn't have it on all day. But you know, you can have this on your desk or hang it around your neck. And whenever you feel that they call you from the nurse's station and say, "Oh, Brian, hurry up, you have another client," you take 1 or 2. And I love
and you breathe in through the resistance too?
No.
You breathe on the side and then you blow out through this. Oh, yeah. What's it called? So people are interested in that.
Relaxator.
Okay.
They could go to the page called consciousbreathing.com, and you could read my testimonial there. What happened when I found this?
Wow, that's amazing. No, stuff like that people don't realize. Little things you can do during the day. Just taking a breath and, you know.
Yes, that's what I like, you know. That you could just stretch, go and drink some water, take a salt shot. I do all these things, you know, when I'm working. So they could read about that. And also another thing, breathing is extremely important for your microbiome, for the candida, that you have good oxygen. Because when you overbreathe, you breathe only here and you breathe too fast. So your body cannot catch the oxygen molecules and the carbon dioxide. So you get a disbalance in your body between those gases. And, one thing that I think is so interesting, breathing is the most important thing. If we stop breathing, we die, right? So why don't we read more about the science behind it? And if you go to the consciousbreathing.com, the book, Conscious Breathing, there is a lot of science, and I was shocked. I thought I knew a lot about breathing. I've gone to breathing exercise or yoga classes or whatever, and I was shocked of all the things I learned. And the guy that wrote it, he went to Stanford, and they did a study on him and another one. They put a clam on his nose for 10 days, and he doesn't really drink or eat junk food. On the 7th day, he ran out with that clamp on his nose and bought sugar, beer, junk food, because he was going bonkers.
Just from breathing through his mouth.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they of course took a lot of blood tests and all that. I have that somewhere in my computer. I think I'm going to send it to you. And the interesting thing was that they could see adrenaline increasing like crazy and dopamine going down. So
wow.
Just by breathing properly.
Yeah, because I know Wim Hof, a lot of people do Wim Hof breathing.
Yes. Yeah, I love it. It's really good. It's just that I happened to find this guy before, and this is so simple because I can do it wherever I am, and I can do it, taping my mouth.
And it's a good sign. If someone's annoying you and you start breathing through that, then they realize, oh, I better tone it down a little bit. Yeah, it's a good signal to, in marriage.
It's very good.
If someone's breathing
for your microbiome. And also it increases your metabolism,
and I don't know if you looked at the data on sauna too, like, infrared sauna, really fascinating how it affects the sleep, stress hormones, nitric oxide levels in the blood, dilating the blood vessels, lowering blood pressure. It's amazing. Like things like this, you say, how come we're not talking about these things? I mean, I was pretty amazed by the data, and sleep and, all these things. As a matter of fact, I was at a conference and a well-known doctor said, yeah, sleep doesn't matter. I'm like, I disagree with you 100%. You try to get someone to eat right with a sleep deprivation. We know about being hangry and tired and grumpy. Like, I used to tease my wife when we were younger. I say, man, if you're sleep deprived and hungry, it's not going to be good. And we get along really great, but it's like, we got to take care of those two problems. And, once she went low carb, that's gone. She's never had like that. I got to eat something right now. I'm freaking out. But, people don't realize how much of a hostage we are to our lifestyle.
Exactly. And, I was thinking, you asked me, why don't we talk about that in the medical field? Why don't we teach our clients breathing, sleeping? Why don't we talk about this? Because we are trained by the pill industry to wrap up, the receipt book and write a pill. They want a pill. Clients want a pill. That's the easiest way out for many doctors to just subscribe a pill instead of sitting down talking like you do.
And not only that, but the problem is that we're in that boat. Doctors realize they're stressed, they're sleep deprived, they're not eating right, they're not exercising like they should, right? They have relationship problems at home, they're drinking more than they should to calm their nerves, they're drinking coffee to get going. So no one likes to talk about what we're struggling with rather than saying, hey, we all have to deal with that. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you, one of my good friends, he was jokingly, he texted me, he said, hey, are you still mad at me? And we've been friends since 3rd grade. We were both best men in our weddings and all that kind of stuff. And I said, mad at you? Is this about 3rd grade when you fouled me playing basketball? Because we haven't had a problem. But he said, we haven't had dinner together in 3 years. I was working 16. And I said, look, man, here's the deal. I'm working 16-hour days. On the weekend, I was trying to spend time with my wife and kids and, how crazy life is. And he said, Brian, if you were your own patient, what would you tell yourself?
That's what I say to you. Yeah, that's what I say.
What would you tell yourself? And I see so many people, I'm looking like, you're killing yourself. This job is killing you. You're stressed out. You hate your job. You're fighting with your spouse. You go find your peace somewhere. My peace was always at home, but I was only home for a couple hours a day rather than now I'm home a little bit more. And so you look and you go, where's my peace? Right? Is it worth it? Is it worth it at some point?
We have to go back to a more normal lifestyle. I watch this. I'm always known and said that nature is the biggest healer. So go and hug a tree, smell flowers, wildflowers out in nature, listen to the birds. I thought I
sit by a campfire one night, just being away from your electronics, and you get tired and say, what time is it? Oh, it's 7. Oh my goodness. Right. Because you don't have that light stimulation and everything.
Yeah, right. No. Yeah. But we need to go back and put those things in the normal, the basics, the pure basics, and calm down. We're not going to achieve anything else. I mean, and I thought we need studies like they do in Japan, where they show you that if you sit in the city, your stress hormones go up, and if you sit in the chair in the forest, they go down. I mean, sometimes I think, you know, it's really overrated, all the studies we think we know, because we do know so much. So my question is, why don't we do all the things we know?
Well, the problem, Bitten, is this. Look, I'm a doc. I'm look at all these studies I just looked at just on stress, on the effect, and I have a stack, and it's there, but it doesn't translate out. That's why people like Ben Bickman, who's doing great work, I love to talk about his studies and what he's doing, because it's not going to do him any good sitting in the lab unless us doctors on the front line start saying, hey, here's some data saying if we lower your insulin, you're going to do better in all these disease processes. Okay, how come no doctors checking insulin in the US? I mean, around the world.
Not in Sweden either. Not in Sweden. They never take fasting insulin.
And that's what was funny when I gave my talk. They're like, that's nice, Brian. You have all these tools. We don't have any of those tools. So then I look at someone like Dr. Unwin, what he accomplished with nothing compared to what I have. Yeah. It's like, man, he's a way better doctor than me, because he's doing it without having all these fancy tools and, you know, body composition scales and electronic, glucose monitors and 24-hour, monitors, blood pressure remotely, all those kind of things that we have that we're kind of spoiled. But you don't need all that necessarily. But I think a big, and I think the other big thing is what we were talking about before is the power of addiction. A lot of people will come in and they'll say, I'm just addicted to cookies, or if I have to give up pasta, life's not worth living. Right. I mean, that mindset, and a lot of people say they're addicted, but they don't really believe it. But what we were talking about, and you even called me out saying it's more than 25% of people you're seeing are food addicted, right?
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to show you the sugar instrument, which I think is very powerful, that you can show a client, this is how bad it is, and this is the consequences you have, and you're already way down here on the curve,
Yeah, so, tell people what that is that don't know, because I know about it, because we talked about it.
Yeah, it's a diagnostic tool where you get a chronological map over all the symptoms of sugar addiction in your life and all the consequences and your weight curve. And you get to know if you have addiction or harmful use, which is extremely important for the treatment outcome, So that's
for me, that is critical. So people who don't know, harmful use means, hey, it's not really good for you, but you could have like one cookie every once in a while, and you'll be okay. But other people, if they have one cookie, it's a total disaster. Die. The problem is we don't. Die. Yeah, you could die, because once you have one cookie, it's like someone just told me. It goes from a cheat meal to a cheat month to a cheat week, and to a cheat year to a cheat lifetime. So you start realizing, you want to have flexibility. You don't want to be so rigid. And I think, in the standard treatment of eating disorders, anyone who says, well, if you talk about a ketogenic diet, is too restrictive, it's not reasonable to do. And then you look at people who are doing it, because if I'm addicted, that is, to me, it's like saying, okay, you're an alcoholic. Okay, tell them not to drink is too restrictive. No, it's not, because if they drink, they can't stop. They don't have control of it. That's the difference of what we're talking about.
Yeah. I used to say you can't take some heroin on Saturday if you're a heroin addict. That's absolutely impossible. But, harmful use, those are the stress eaters, emotional eaters, party eaters, culture eaters. They eat for a reason. So Carlton Erickson, researcher at Texas University, he said many years ago, and I never forget that, he said, when you have a harmful user in front of you, you can ask them, why do you drink like this? Why do you eat like this? In which situation do you do it? Why? That's a correct question. You should never say why to an addict, because addiction is a primary illness. You have lost control. It is your brain controlling. So why is a stupid question. I eat because I'm addicted. I drink because I'm addicted. So you should never terrorize addicts with the why. You should start working. How do I help you with this? How do we do it? How do we get out of this? How do you stop?
Yeah, and I think with that, there's so much shame, because we all know, for me, when I think of addiction medicine, I think that's got to be the most frustrating medicine in the world, because of the relapse rate and the relapse rate and the shame that goes with it. The problem is, like, I'll see someone, they go, oh my gosh, you're gonna be mad at me because I had cookies yesterday. I'm like, I'm not mad at you, right? It's what happened. Let's talk about it. How do we handle it different next time, right? What do we change? How do you feel?
I love to explain addiction to clients and have them embrace it and de-shame them and take away the stigma when they understand the brain illness. That's not hard at all. That's very easy if you have the correct terminology and tools. Very easy.
Yeah, and so what we're talking about is her screening. It's absolutely astounding, because a lot of the stuff I've been learning in the last couple of weeks, really, we're talking about whether you're breastfed or not, whether you're a C-section born and early childhood trauma, all these things we know by the data affects us. But
Yes.
no one asks those questions, you know, because no one has a lot of times. But saying, when was the first time you snuck food, or when did you eat alone? There's certain questions that you say, yeah, this is an addiction, and to really realize if you are addicted, then you can do something about it. If you're in denial your whole life, you're never going to be able to address it.
Yeah, no, you're going to try every method there is, and you're never going to get any long-term help. And, you know, I thought about that. We talked about another simple tools, hydrochloric acid. Do you use it with your clients?
You know, I'm aware of it, and I really haven't, but I will now based on your recommendation. So tell people about that.
I'm going to send the test to you. It's a simple test you do on your clients. They do it at home, 3 days. Well, I have found out that so many, and especially gastric bypass patients, that so many of my clients have, you know, upset stomach, they have diarrhea, they have constipation, they feel bloated, they feel tired, they feel like the food doesn't move like it should, and all kinds of things, you know. And anyway, and I remember when the vegan people said that they didn't eat meat because it was dead stuff that got stuck in their stomach. And I thought, because they eat so much vegan food, you know, they don't have enough hydrochloric acid. The body doesn't create it. And hydrochloric acid is extremely important because it kills candida. So if you don't have enough hydrochloric acid in your stomach, the candida will survive that comes in through food and what you're eating, you know. And another thing, if your environment in the lower part of your stomach is not acid enough, your body cannot release certain satiety hormones up to your brain.
Exactly right.
It's not going to go up there. So, you know, and I'm so shocked.
So and we have a huge epidemic of people taking proton
PPIs.
pump inhibitors, PPIs.
Yes.
Osteoporosis goes up. We have a lot of complications and problems that are going up. And then also what people don't talk about a lot is because you're decreasing the acid, what happens is these bad bacteria can migrate up closer to the mouth, right? They're competing to get to the sugar source.
Yes.
And you're not killing it off with the acid. So guess what? Increased risk of pancreatic cancer, gallbladder disease,
esophagus cancer,
esophageal cancer, you know, and stomach cancer. You start looking at these things, you think, wow, our body is doing it for a reason. We're short-circuiting our own body to alleviate some symptoms that are caused by our lifestyle most of the time.
Exactly.
So cutting back on, we all know. And the other one that people don't talk about that really affects the gut microbiome in the stomach too is anti-inflammatories like NSAIDs, like ibuprofen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it can have a huge effect. So there's people who live on that and they're getting ulcers. And just think about it. When do people get ulcers? When they're stressed out.
Yeah.
And everything hurts. And then when you're stressed, it makes the pain worse. So it's such a hard cycle to get out of, you know. And it's the same thing.
Vicious circle.
Yeah, we see these vicious circles everywhere, and you look and think, oh my gosh, you're just stuck, and you see it. And once, you know, because you think about it, even Dr. Unwin talks about that too with triglycerides. The higher your triglycerides are, the more it crosses over the blood-brain barrier and makes you even hungrier. Then you eat more stuff that raises your triglycerides more. Then you get hungrier. And then you're messing up your gut microbiome. It's so complicated when you think about it, but it's pretty simple also when you kind of say, okay, let's stop putting in the bad stuff. Let's get rid of, you know, put in some good stuff and see what happens and work on all the other things like stress and sleep and all those things.
Yeah, this is the hard part because you have to do such simple things. When I lecture, you know, a lot of people snort at me sometimes, you know, healthcare professionals and psychologists and psychiatrists, and they say, it can't be this simple. And I said, yeah, it is this simple. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to help people guide them back to health. We have to help them sleep a little bit better. And we have to help them do this, you know, baby steps, micro habits, one day at a time. And you said something very important. And the reason I reached out to you, because I know from my clients, thousands of them, that what the doctors say is the most important word of all. Even if I say it and the doctor say the same thing, it's more important if the doctor said it. So you guys have an incredible role in giving good information about these things, you know, that you can restore yourself back to health with very, very simple tools. It doesn't have to be complicated. What I'm saying, it's not easy to do it, You have to have a lot of patience. It takes a heck of a lot of time. It takes months. It takes a long time to heal the brain and the body. But, you know, you have to have good company on the journey. You know, join up with like-minded people and just pump each other with support. You know,
I think that's so important.
That you did that. Good that you did that. You know, take it. Oh shit! Did that happen? Oh, that's sad. But you know, let go of it and we start again. Let go. We start again.
So important. Yeah. You know, yes. And I often joke with my patient. I say, your problem is, and this is what I see a lot. It's really the caregiver, the kind person who wants to have peace in their life and they want to be nice to everyone. But people are rubbing them the wrong way and they don't want to say anything. They go, my brother-in-law is making me crazy all the time. And I'm so frustrated all the time, but I don't want to cause a problem. But then the New Yorker just tells people off, like someone cuts them off, they tell them off and then they're done with it. They let go. Yeah. So it's like holding on to this poison for your whole life. It's like, hey, communicate with people, let them know how you're feeling, be able to say, hey, this doesn't work for me, you know, whatever it is. But all those things they're so critical because those pent up frustration. And the other thing that helps, which is the most ironic thing ever, is exercise. So when people are really stressed, the first thing to go is exercise. I don't have time to exercise because I'm stressed. Well, if you exercise, you'll be less stressed and then you'll exercise more. Too tired to exercise. Well, if you exercise, then you'll have more energy to exercise again, right? Or to do other things. So all these things that they're in lifestyle we just neglect, they really are the medicine we need.
Absolutely. And, you know, people are so depleted on energy. So one of the things I do is I tell them to take a paper, fold it in two, and then you start writing on one page, energy loss, energy gain. Start looking at energy and, you know, start changing your food. And you're going to see that your energy curve going to change. How much energy do you gain from doing this? Because when we restore somebody's energy, physical, psychological, mental, everything, you know, you're going to be free to do anything you want to do. You can't drive a car without gasoline. So, I mean, it's stupid even thinking that. So you have to change the fuel mix.
Yeah, and you have to do. And you have to fill up your tank. You have to be able to say, hey, I'm not going to drive. I'm going to let my car cool down a little bit. I'm going to change my tank here. Even though I got to drive somewhere, I'm going to rest and wait. So these kind of things are so critical to our fields and the interrelation and how important it is, you know, and this sugar screening tool is critical, the addiction, because then you know where you're sitting and then you know how strict you have to be.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise it's trial and error. We figure it out over time, but why not figure it out at the beginning instead we're screwing around for, you know, a year and a half and 2 years and not having progress.
I mean, we didn't do this with alcoholics before either. We let them be, you know, the gutter alcoholic, you know, the one we tried to help them when they were in the gutter. Then they've lost everything and had brain damage. That's when the social offices tried to give them treatment and help them.
Yeah.
Thank God we started understanding that we could screen through a doctor's office. We could do screening on alcohol. And we started talking about early detection before you lost your family, before you lost your job, before you lost your brain, you know, all those kind of things. Because alcoholics lose their family before they lose the job. Many times the job is the last thing. So an employer has a very high responsibility to be aware of alcohol problems at work. And I think it should be very much the same with food, with overweight. If you have overweight people in your office, you know, that's not their fault. You know, you have to help them because they are trapped in a rut. So, you know, you could do so much by daring to say, you know, could I help you? I read this study sometime that 7% of doctors, GPs, dare to ask all the clients that were obese that came to his or her office and wanted help with some health problems, you know, that of course very often was related to the obesity. But 7% only of the doctors said, hey, I can see that you're obese. Can I help you? I understand that that is an illness. Can I help you? The others pretended they didn't see it.
Well,
can you imagine?
Well, because it's ugly and it's
yes, because
it's ugly and you don't have time. You're like, look, I got 7 minutes. I'm not going to fix your obesity problem in 7 minutes. That's part of it.
But what if you see me, if you hear me, if you understand that it is a very deadly problem for me, if you just said it, okay, I can see that you have a problem with weight. You know, it's you haven't caused this to yourself. There is a problem behind this. Let me send you for further referral or whatever, but just see those clients and dare to say it.
Well,
But you know,
Bitten,
when people, what happens when people lose weight? Everybody goes, "Oh, you're getting so skinny. Oh, you got to stop now. And have you stopped eating? Are you starving yourself?" Then the client lose the battle and they go up 40 kilo, you know.
yeah,
And
exactly right.
nobody says nothing. Nothing. Nobody addresses it. Everybody looks away thinking, how could you be so stupid? Let yourself go. They don't understand that this was loss of control. It was a brain that was hijacked.
Yeah,
This is what I want to address.
and also what people don't realize really, and because I see it daily, almost every day I have a new patient. I say, well, what was your experience with your old doctor? And they'll say, you know what? Everything that went wrong with me, and they blamed it on my weight. They says, because you're not eating right, it's because this, but I'm doing what you're telling me to do, doctor. And it's so frustrating for the patient because what the doctor's telling them to do is not working. Yeah, and they don't change course ever. And they keep doing the same thing. Exercise more, eat less, exercise more.
Yeah.
But they're not telling what to eat or what to do. And, you know, I've seen people with chronic colitis change their lifestyle and boom, they resolve their symptoms. They come off their meds. And it's ridiculous that people aren't saying, hey, look, we know this for a fact. There's no doubt in my mind. I've seen the studies on how stress affects colitis, how it affects autoimmune disease, how it affects back pain. It is such a huge factor. But everyone says, yeah, stress, whatever. That's one of those things. Like, okay, deal with it. We have to deal with it. Yeah, because it affects all this stuff. So Bitten.
So how are we going to change this, Brian?
Well, I think learning from each other. That's why it's so great talking to you, what you're doing with the addiction aspect, because so many of us believed that it was just physiologic. Just physiologic, meaning, okay, we're going to, you know, get your insulin better and everything's going to get better. We're just going to change your diet and use eat keto and you're good. But like, we have to look at the big picture, because again, you could eat good, you could eat all the right stuff and be stressed and tense and not sleep and, you know, be smoking and drinking all night or whatever, and you're not going to have the benefit. And, you know, spiritually, there's so many factors to us humans, but we're not mice in a lab. So you could say, okay, restrict to 500 calories a day and you do that. But guess what? There's physiologic. If you're eating 500 calories of seed oils and garbage food, you're feeding the bad bacteria, and that's going to make you want to eat. And your body is going to want to survive. Our body wants to do, your body wants to help you out, whether you believe it or not. And so I think we have to realize, just like, you know, your stomach is making acid to protect you, and we're blocking it, saying, oh, take all these medicines to block it that cause all these other problems, but your stomach will feel better, but you'll be breaking your bones and break your hip and die when you're 68 years old. So there's a lot of stuff we have to look consequences. But people just look at their one little area of medicine and not look at the whole organism and say, if I could do certain things to make your skin look great, but it's going to knock off your liver. Okay, then I don't think we should be doing that, right? It's not worth the trade-off to fix your toenail fungus to kill your liver. Let's look at other options of health. And but you're looking at what you're doing is looking at the most intimate area of medicine of addiction. It really is. I mean, be able to connect and bond, and they know you care, and asking the hard questions and saying the hard things and say, look, this is going to kill you if you keep doing this, you know, really, literally.
Yeah, but I felt that was your presentation at Nutrition Network was one of the absolutely best doctor's office method I've heard. It was so holistic. The things you did with your clients was right up the alley how we work with addicts.
Yeah, I think we have to realize that.
The groups, you know, you go out walking with them. I mean, it's amazing. You're the role model. You lead by example. I mean, you help them. You're open to talking to them about grief and sorrow.
And I've had the struggles, and I know what it is. Like, unless you struggle with it, you don't really know. Like, you've struggled with addiction, so you understand it. If you never had struggles with addiction, you go, just do this and this, and it's fine. Just do what I'm doing, and it works. And so you go, well, what have I tried? I've tried all different things, and saying, does this work better? Does this work better? And then if that's not working, you change course. But people try one thing and they give up and they go, okay, it's not going to work. I can't do it. But I think in life, we have to be open-minded and look and say, okay, let's look and see what's working and what's not. If it's not, we change it. We have to. If it's not working for that patient, I can't tell them, keep doing the same thing we're doing that's not working. You haven't lost a pound in 6 months. We got to change.
Why don't you go there? Refer them. We have to refer them. We have to work in multidisciplinary teams. I've always said that. You know, if I can't help you, you know, there's a problem. Somebody else can help you. So you need to try something else, because I have used up my tools with you.
Yeah, and ultimately that's what's important. That's exactly right. To be humble enough to say, I'm not an expert on addiction. Here, go see Bitten. She knows what she's talking about. See the expert. Like, if I'm going to have someone build a room onto my house, I don't get someone who's never done it before and say, I'll try it out in your house. I'm like the guy who said, yeah, I've done 3,000 of these. You know, it's not a big deal. Here's what we do. Okay, good. If I'm going to get a heart surgery, I'm going to probably look at someone who knows what they're doing and not just take anyone off the street, you know? And I think for that problem, it's worth it. If you have a certain legal problem, you go to the best attorney in that problem. You don't get someone
Absolutely.
who goes, I don't know anything about it, but I'll do it cheaper than the other guy. You pay the money and do the right thing, right? And get it done.
Yeah. I used to say, don't go to the gynecologist if you broke your leg.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly
that's how I used to say it when I lecture. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think all these things and being able to, like, the more we can collaborate and get, help people is a huge thing. And understanding addiction, that a few years ago, everyone was laughing about, mocking about it. And I'll tell you, after that podcast, we had so many people write in and say, yep, it helped me. It helped me. I'm doing so much better. This addiction got better. And my life is better. I'm laughing again. And I got a letter from a priest in the Midwest. And he says, Doc, what you're saying is true. Don't let him get on you, because he works with alcohol rehab with his groups. One group, he said, look, we're going to do a low carb keto diet while we're going through alcohol stuff. And the other one, they just had donuts and cake and everything. He said the success rate was overwhelmingly higher in the group where they had a better diet at the same time they're trying to get off alcohol. Right. So he said, doctor, I'm telling you that you're right on the right track. Keep going, because we appreciate this. And so there's certain things that, and hearing what you're saying, because again, if we're looking at the gut microbiome and the effect on the brain in the addiction centers, we have to assess that. We have to look at that. So,
Absolutely.
It's all really critical. And I think we're going to learn a lot over the next couple of years, just with all this interdisciplinary.
Yeah, and we need to dare work with complementary medicine. As we need to talk to the orthomolecular doctors. I'm lucky to have one that trains, she's a multiple sclerosis expert. She's an orthomolecular medicine doctor here in Sweden, and she is absolutely wonderful. She teaches microbiome, sleep. She teaches all these things. Brain.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing, because this is all kind of new medicine to me, but it's really fascinating when you start looking at it. Say, okay, let's start out those little candida, and we'll kill them off.
One more thing I thought about before we quit. I know time is up soon, but to support each other, we professionals, to be open like this and talk about our frustration for certain clients and our struggle, to be a health care professional. Because, when I went to 12-step group, they said to me, because if you're working with your clients in the same group, but you have to have two hats, your professional hat and your private hat. That's very important, otherwise, boundaries could be pretty messed, but you could be very, very personal, but you should probably not be so private. That's at least the way I interpret these things. Because I'm not working with Bitten, the person, with my clients. I do have my professional hat because I'm trained professional.
Correct.
So it's not only my own experience. And I think that's very important too, that we support each other, professionals, that we have groups where we can be very safe and talk to other professionals. And, I feel very comfortable with other medical professionals because they understand the dilemma of being so powerless sometimes with medicine, The toolbox is empty sometimes, and we see people suffering like crazy. That's pretty hard.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, one thing that I've seen in medicine that's broken my heart really in the last couple of years, especially, is that we've lost the ability to have open debate and discussion. I may say, hey, I see there's a brain addiction. You see, I see the gut microbiome. Well, what do you think? What do I think? And we have a reasonable discussion about it. I just recently got, for the first time in my life, kicked off of YouTube for this podcast, because I said, I was interviewing a doctor, and I said, what are you seeing in your clinic? And he's a hospice doctor. And he told me what he was seeing in his clinic. And I told him what I was seeing in my clinic. And they said, this is medical misinformation. So we're apparently not seeing what we're seeing. They must have some really good fact checkers. But the interesting part about it was we were saying what we're seeing. I'm not saying speculation on theoretical stuff that doesn't make sense. This is what I'm seeing in my clinic. So I think in medicine, this is something we need healing of, that be able to say, hey, look, maybe I have some crazy idea, but maybe the crazy idea is right. We have to look at gut microbiome. If you talked about this a few years ago, everyone thinks you're crazy. How can these few things in your stomach affect all life? And then you start realizing the communications. It's amazing. It's incredible. Yeah. Right?
There are more than the cells in your body.
There's more cells in your gut than your body. That is amazing. I love that saying.
Yeah.
So Bitten, in closing, I have to ask you. Yeah. Because this is life's best medicine. What's life's best medicine for you? What's something where you say, hey, this is, the importance of people, like, I morbidly, I say, like, on your deathbed, or if you're there and you say, look, I got a few seconds to tell someone what matters in life. What would you tell people?
A passion for life, to say yes to life. you know, wake up in the morning and be curious about the new day, whatever is going to come there, and think that, you know, I will deal with it, whatever comes my way. And that's saying yes to life. And that's, to me, spirituality and passion for living. You know, that's what's important. Being free of my addiction gave me that passion for living. And I'm going to use all the energy I used to drink and eat and smoke into living every day. And there are shitty days, there are bad days, let me tell that. Everybody has those days, but I know this will pass, you know, and it's going to come sunshine again. So that's what I try to do. And to share, one of my best passion is to share about addiction like this, because I know so many people suffer out there and feeling shame, and I want to free them. I want to help them get free with tools.
Man, that's awesome.
Is that enough?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. That's so true. You know, focusing your energy on the positive and focusing on how you can help people, and realize I can't fix it all. They're going to have a bad day, and you have to smile through the bad days, and you smile through the good days and go, okay, this day will be over in a few hours. I'll be laying my head on the pillow, hopefully, you know? And so I think that's so critical. It's our view of life, and really reaching out to others and helping them and saying, gosh, and like you said, you know, it's like, it almost makes me emotional thinking about it, because sometimes I hear someone, like you said, you see it in the addiction. I've seen people totally addicted to cookies. I say, what makes you happy? And like, cookies. That's what makes me happy. I go, nothing else makes you happy except cookies. There has to be something. But to see this person get delivered from that and say, you know, I really don't care about cookies anymore. I'm having so much fun with my grandkids now. And you realize, like, you can hear the chains hit the ground from them being freed of something, of this bondage they've had. And there's a feeling in that says, look, there's hope now. Right. I
see that in their eyes. I can see, you know, I meet clients. I work with so many clients, you know, and I know this weekend I'm going to go and do a lecture for my old pack or tribe or whatever you call it. I rarely go out doing that anymore because I'm sort of on the way to retire. But anyway, so I'm going to go and meet them. And I know, and I've got some mails already. I met them when they were very sick. And usually I go out lecture, and suddenly there stands a very healthy, bright, shining person in front of me. And they said, hey. And I go, hey. And they say, you don't recognize me, do you? I said, no, sorry. And I could vaguely think something. And then they say, I am. And they say their name. And I almost faint. 20 years ago, this was the obese, sick person with dead eyes, you know. No light, no nothing, just struggling through the day. And here you have somebody that have a family, they have kids, they started studying. I mean, you know, they are alive. It is so incredible to see that again and again. And actually, that's my passion to see. I love seeing
awesome.
That.
That's awesome to see that you're leaving people better than when you found them.
Yes.
Right. It's like when you go walk in, there's trash, and you pick it up and you go, okay, it's nicer now than when I got here. I'm not going to throw trash here and make it terrible for other people. So I think living life like that's so great. Bitten, what an absolute honor and pleasure to have you on. I'm glad we got that you reached out to me, that we got to do this. This is fun. And I'm telling you, we have a lot of work to do together. I think we're going to connect and help a lot of people and use our skill sets and combine them. And I think that's a magic pill right there, is helping, you know, using our knowledge and experience and
our passion, passion for helping people, because that's what I sense in you too. And that's what I picked up during your lecture. And I thought, oh God, I got to talk to him.
Yeah, it's so great. I'm so glad. And I'm going to use your tool. Send me all your info and everyone, we have to, I got to go see a patient. So everyone, you know, do that. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. This is a grand rounds, you know, continuing medical education. You should get points for this lecture, because this is really important, critical. And I know you're going to take something from this. Is one that you're going to want to listen to a few times, because you can't grasp it all at the beginning, what we're saying, but get your piece.
And ask questions. Email me and ask questions if you have a question.
Oh yeah, Ben, how do people get in touch with you, by the way? I got to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Do that.
How do people get in touch with you?
They go to my website, bittensaddiction.com, and contact info. There's a contact form there. So they can just email me there. I want contact. They can ask a question or whatever. And
if people want to do the sugar addiction form, can they do that directly through you?
No, I only train professionals now. So the sugar, you mean the diagnostic tool that you and I looked at?
Correct.
Yeah, no, they can do training with me. Professionals can train and get certified by me, but actual clients doing it. But email me and I refer to you, because
exactly. Okay.
There's a whole team of people doing it.
Exactly. So they could do it through you and find someone who's an expert in
Oh
this
yeah,
area.
absolutely. All over the place.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Okay.
So Bitten, thank you so much. Everyone, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. You know, you got a lot out of this, and thank you for spending your time with us.
Yeah. Big hug.
Big hug to you. One of these days we'll do it in person.
Yeah, I hope so. Bye-bye.
All right, Bitten. Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.